visit a country like this, what's the future? What does the future of this country hold? Is there a future here? Should we rebuild Jewish life here? Is there a reason to rebuild Jewish life here? I was challenged on that question in Joburg, if you recall. Especially looking at the death and looking at the terrible destruction that existed here. And everyone who does come here must go and look at it and see what happened to the community, where our own families come from. I include myself. I had a son born in Kovna. You know where Kovna is? 4 weeks ago yesterday. And my great-grandfather was from Vilna, so we sort of closed the loop there. But so I include myself when I say that we all come from here. And it's important for us to look both at the past, where we come from personally, what happened here, but I believe as importantly, what exists here today, what does the future hold, to make some real decisions and ask ourselves real questions about what should be done. When I came to Lithuania 5.5 years ago, I was surprised, as most people are, as many people are, to see that this community resembled most of the communities in the former Soviet Union. Jewish people, young people, older people, the full spectrum of Jewish age group. But when you come to the question of Jewish knowledge, Jewish practice, Jewish involvement in Jewish education, you have a basic big zero. Okay? I was just discussing with Robin's husband.
He's trying to favor. You know?
Get me back at some point.
I will go back.
Please, tomorrow if you come to camp.
Okay.
I'm the director's husband. What was I going to say? The question is about the future, like we said. What was I going to say? Got it, my age, guys. I think it's very bad. Forget this. Rebuilding the community. And, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
You know, we talk about so much about the Holocaust and the physical loss of life and the destruction of the Jewish people in Europe, in Eastern Europe in particular. And we forget about the spiritual loss of life. This community in Vilna, I don't have the exact numbers, but there were at least 25,000 Jews in Vilna after the war. Okay? Most of the Jews from the shtetls left. Most were killed, of course. But those who did survive were able to run away or be hidden or whatever. Most of them came to the biggest cities, which is Vilna and Kovna. Okay? In the shtetls today, you have very few Jews. You have some shtetls that have absolutely no Jews. You have a few that have smattering of a few number of Jews, up to 13, 15, something like that. But the biggest percentage came to the big cities. And you had Jews who lived the full Jewish life of Vilna, of Kovna, of the shtetla, the full rich Jewish life that you had. From the Bund, I'm Lubavitcher Rabbi saying, don't fool this, to the ultra-Orthodox, so-called. Okay? You had the full spectrum of Jewish life. And you had people who knew that and did that. What happened to that? How come you come here today you don't have a semblance of that? How can you walk the streets of Vilna today and you don't have a semblance of the Jewish market and the Jewish life and the Jewish educational institutions that once existed here? And the reason for that, in one word, is the Soviet Union and the Soviet occupation of this country and the Soviet indoctrination of communist ideology and atheism into all people who lived in these countries, and of course in our case the Jewish people. We don't think about that. I don't think we talk about that enough, and we don't realize what a loss that is, which equals, or perhaps if I can take the liberty of saying, is larger than the physical loss of life of the Holocaust, because it continues today. To come to Vilna and to find Jews who knew about Pesach, knew they have to have matzah on Pesach perhaps, remembered baking matzah secretly during Soviet times. But a Seder, Purim, Shavuos, kosher food, bris, the basics didn't exist here. Okay? And again, we're talking about Vilna, Yerushalayim Delita, or general Lithuania, wherever your family may come from here, okay? You're talking about that rich history, and to walk here and to see basically nothing from a Jewish standpoint. Again, I don't care where you come from, the Jewish spectrum, and it doesn't matter. We're all one Jewish family, of course. But what you get by osmosis, I said in South Africa, what you get by osmosis, especially in a community like Joburg, where you walk into the hypermarket and you see so many thousands of items that have the Besdin stamp on them. It's ridiculous. It makes the people in the States should be ashamed of themselves. New York City. But no semblance of the Jewish life that existed here before. And in the 5+ years that we've been here, our work has been, and to someone we were talking about, rebuild Jewish life here, should all good Jews go to Israel? I said, my opinion is obviously biased. I've dedicated the last 5.5 years of my life to rebuilding this community. But again, it's not a question of rebuilding enough. It's a question that there are Jews here, there are thousands of Jews here, not tens of thousands, but there's certainly thousands of Jews left in this country. They deserve, at the very least, to have the basics of Jewish education. They deserve, at the very least, to be connected to what existed here before. If we don't give it to them, no one's going to give it to them. If they don't have that, I'm not so sure that all of them are going to even want to go to Israel. Those who had more education, more knowledge, and were more Jewishly involved, they went to Israel already when the gates opened a number of years ago. Okay? Those who remained here, for many different personal reasons, thousands of different reasons, either an elderly family member or whatever reason it might be, but fundamentally, it's partially because they don't know enough about their Jewish roots to pull them. They don't have that pull. It's schleppzenish. Okay? And if we speak in Yiddish, Lithuania, one of the things you do see, I spent some time in Rostov, where David Yeshua is from. And this young man was in 10th grade of our high school this year, which was the first grade of high school. We started school here 3 years ago. This year we added 8 grades. We had 4 grades last year. Went up to 12 this year. This is one of our 10th graders who speaks in English very, very well. I'll ask him maybe to say a few words if you guys would like in a few minutes about his personal experience from his point of view. But okay. So that's the Jewish community here today. How many Jews in Lithuania today? Where's Regina? Where's the expert? She's on the I said to someone, I met a guy who was formerly, I believe, the chief rabbi of Poland. I asked him, how many Jews left in Poland? I met him in the airport of Frankfurt. He says, 1.5. Me and another guy consider him half Jewish.
Be pedestrian tomorrow morning, I won't by then.
But he was with a black hat and a long beard, so you can't trust these people. That's not okay, man. In this room you're in today, we have a soup kitchen here. And today over 100 plus people had a free meal here today. Mostly elderly people, some younger people, some unemployed people. The community here today, if you look at Poland, this place looks like it's in the dumps comparatively. If you look to Belarus, this place is paradise. Okay? And this place looks 1,000 times more Western than it did when I came here 5.5 years ago. You know, they say that there was a rabbi, not a Lubavitcher rabbi, traveled all over the world and said he saw 2 things everywhere, Coca-Cola and Lubavitch. We came here before Coca-Cola. So the city is modernizing and trying to westernize itself, the country in general. But at the same time, the Jewish people, which is a small community, and especially the elderly, are left behind. Not only the elderly Jews, but all the elderly people. The pensions here are between $30 and $50 a month. Am I right? A bit less. Okay. And utility bills in the winter to pay for the apartments that people live in can cost close to $100 a month. Okay? So if you do simple arithmetic, it just doesn't add up. And people simply don't have from where to make ends meet. And as a rabbi, educated as a rabbi and educated to the type of stuff I do, I never expected to come to a country and get involved in humanitarian aid and giving out food packages before the holidays to a few thousand people, etc., families. But coming here and seeing the real situation on the ground, if you come to Shul tomorrow, you'll see an elderly man named Moshe who's short, who's not well emotionally, psychologically, should I say. But that's probably because of the beatings that he received during the war. And what he went through. But this man lived. He now got, the government gave him here a different apartment, without heat in the winter, of course. But this apartment is paradise compared to what the man lived in. The man lived in a thing which was like a 15th of this room. You couldn't even call it a lean-to. Okay? And they're cooking in one room without light. I took a man from the States there. just not to be believed. Okay, so the conditions of the way of what people have to go through is very tough. It's very tough for people. There are some Jewish business people here, but Jewish business people, meaning if they're making what would be considered a lower income salary, lower middle income salary in Western standards, that's already considered someone very wealthy. Okay, there was one Jewish businessman here, Igor Shifrin. He's not a Jewish businessman anymore. They claimed that he was trying to bribe someone, which is normal business in the former Soviet Union, but he was Jewish. Okay, and he also just bought himself a Lexus and made a 5-year jubilee of his company in the fanciest nightclub in Vilna. That's a no-no for a Jew. They arrested him. They set him up and they said they arrested this guy. And he was in solitary, I think, for close to 10 months. Okay, I visited him in prison and put on film with him, tried to lift his spirits. But they basically broke apart the man's business. And you call it anti-Semitism? I'll let you be the judge. You know, people ask all the time, do you see anti-Semitism in this country? And I don't think there's government-sponsored anti-Semitism, although there's a flip side to that, which we talked about. But you see individual instances of anti-Semitism, which is very startling. Walking into a public school just down the street here a few years ago, a kid walked by, Hail Hitler. You know, okay, a kid, you know, you get kids cursing at you in English, saying words in English that I've never heard growing up in the States. But the disturbing thing is you see occasionally instances of quote-unquote educated people saying anti-Semitic things that you know, political correctness hasn't gotten to Lithuania, and people say the most startling things to you. Things that shouldn't even be repeated in such company. I had one Lithuanian lawyer say to me, he says, you know, I used to think what the Lithuanians did to the Jews during the war was wrong, but now I understand why they did it. Now I understand why I did it after getting to know the Jewish community. She didn't find anything scandalous, anything terrible. And of course there's nothing terrible one could find out that could justify something so terrible, right? These are, you know, we talked about the government and government-sponsored anti-Semitism. I think in our work, in reaching out to the Jewish community here, we've only seen the most cooperation and received the most cooperation from government circles. The flip side of it, like I said when we were talking with Rabbi and her husband.
Why is it
Huh? Mark.
husband.
Is that there are a number of people who've been deported from the States. There's a guy who lived just out, originally from Boston. There's a guy who lived just outside of Boston, Norwood, Mass. A man by the name of Lulakis, who was in his 90s, who was the head of the Vilna police during the war. Okay? Head of Vilna police during the war means that he's responsible for all the people in Fanat. We went today, I believe. Right? We did today. This man was about to be deported from the States. They were about to take away his citizenship because of he had, you know, lied about not, etc., etc. And he came back to Lithuania, basically to a hero's welcome. There's a television program called Lietuvos Rytas Television. Lietuvos Rytas is the most popular daily here in Lithuania. They have a weekly syndicated program. And this guy did a story on Lulakis, and he said that Lulakis is innocent just like Demjanjuk was innocent. And just like Demjanjuk had to leave that terrible Jew-controlled United States to get justice in Israel, so too Lulakis had to come here to get justice. Okay, the man has been here, came summertime 2 or 3 years ago.
Probably 2 years.
2 years ago. And he hasn't been prosecuted. They say he's sick, he's this, he's that. And again, the problem is that it becomes a Jewish issue. All the Jewish organizations, the Israeli government have to do all the screaming and demanding. And Lithuanian people are very defensive about it, don't want to hear it. Lithuanian people say you're branding all of us as anti-Semites and all of us as Jew killers, and that's not true. Well, of course, no one's saying that. We're just saying that you guys should be demanding these people prosecution instead of defending them. So there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues here in the community. Just to talk about a few of the other programs that we've done here to try to get the Jewish community back involved in its roots. I think I said in South Africa that we have these branding irons. As soon as a guy walks into our Chabad center, we brand with Chabad, right? You know, there. You know, that's why you see all the black beards and the long beard there and the black hat on the Yeshua there. But when we first came here, you know, it was this year in school that we had the first child who had a bris on 8 days, probably close to 50 years. Okay, the second one was my son, 3.5 weeks ago. But that child's great-grandmother is from a town just outside Shalai. She eats in our kitchen. Okay, and there was a gentleman from South Africa, he made know the name Jonathan Beer. He was here in town, he was at the kitchen today eating, and he went over to this lady, and he wants to know from everybody where they're from, because Lithuanian roots, and which town they come from. He asked them about everyone, where they come from. I don't have an idea, I don't ask everyone where they come from, I live here. But he asked her, she told him, and great-grandmother, 75 years old, and her nachas at watching, after so many years of communism, etc., her great-grandchild having a bris on 8 days. We flew in a oil especially for that. But, again, the basics, Jewish life didn't exist here. We had it during the summer camp, during the winter, we bring out a moil who's expert in doing older children, young adults, and we have people at the age of 17, 20, 10 having a bris. Okay? I tell them they're crazy, I wouldn't do it if I were shoes. Right? But they do it, and you know, you see people step forward and do things that wouldn't be done in Western society, that people wouldn't have the mysterious nefesh, the self-sacrifice to do. And you see that despite Soviet occupation and despite the Holocaust, the Pintili Yid, the spark of the Jewish neshama that's in each and every one of us, never gets covered up, and can be covered only so much, but it's always there, it's always waiting to be uncovered, and that the Jew is waiting to get involved in embracing Jews. And of course he'll make his choices, and he'll do what he wants, or she wants, right? When no one's forcing anyone to do anything in any particular way, we're only giving them the tools to be involved and get educated. What else can I say? Those of you who will be lucky enough to come to our camp tomorrow, meet some of the kids. We'll have a chance to talk to them, ask them where they come from, and which shtetl, and talk to them about what it's meant to them to get involved Jewishly. That's basically, in a nutshell, that's what I have to say. If you guys have any questions, Bakasha.
This property, is it your property? I mean, is it Chabad? And where is it being funded from?
Okay. This building was a number of apartments. We bought it, a response from the States, and gutted it, basically reconstructed it to our needs. Okay. There is a building in the very center of town on Vilna, on Gaona Street. Are you on Gaona Street today? Yeah. Did you see the building that Regina pointed out to you, the building that belonged to the Jewish community before the war? It was given back to the synagogue. The synagogue sold it. She did. Okay. Restitution of property is another issue, which is a very sticky one here. You can understand the poor country in transition has problems returning property. And if you look at the lists, which I have, of property ownership in the old town of Vilna or the old town of Kovna, every second or third name is Jewish. Okay? And a lot of those people's relatives, some of those people's relatives are still around today. And they were to start restituting all that property, it would cost them a lot of money to displace the people living in these properties. Unfortunately, the Lithuanian government isn't very forthcoming about it. They don't say, this is costly, we can't do it, although we have to. They say, we don't really have to, it's not really So, on communal property, they're a little bit more forthcoming, not much. They've returned some buildings in Kovna, they've returned more buildings. There's a massive fight about it between two Jewish groups there. There's only 500 to 1,000 Jews there, but you know, there's the shul I go to and the shul I don't. You guys know the joke, I'm sure. So restitution of property is another issue. The kindergarten has about another 30.
From kindergarten to grade 12.
Yeah. Well, the kindergarten was about 4 years ago.
110 kids.
And who are the teachers?
That's right, where did you get your teachers from?
Well, my wife is the teacher, director, and we had a couple, they also just had a baby. They went to Israel, but they are from the former Soviet Union. They left when they were kids. And he's a rabbi, and she's a rebbitzin, and they're very good. And they came, they're living with us. They'll be back in September, please God. And we have volunteers from Israel. We have a number of girls who come and guys who come and teach. So if anyone, we'll draft any one of you guys, because one of the fundamental principles in Babish is if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. If you know Beis, teach Beis.
Is it recognized by the Ministry of Education or within
Absolutely, yeah. We're a private school, but we're registered and we just give out diplomas to our 12th graders. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something different. A lot of Jews that forgot that they were Jews are still coming forward.
This is not Poland, but in Poland there's a phenomenon of a lot of people who were, a lot, I mean again the numbers are God knows how many. It's probably, in my opinion, it's probably in the hundreds, some people say in the tens of thousands. But parents who give their young children to a Polish family and who were killed, and then on the deathbed the parents say to the kid that they're really Jewish. I actually met a Jew from Lithuania like that, from Svenčionis. This is an interesting story. This man's a priest. Walking down the street to my home after shul service on Shavuos, my wife and my family, and we walked into a guy, an older woman from Svenčionis, the same woman who said about the Torah scroll wallpaper, and she's walking with the priest. I say hello to her, and she says, this guy's Jewish. He was born in Svenčionis. If you know the name of the town in Lithuania. Well, it's a Lithuanian town. The kid was given by the mother to a Polish woman in Svenčionis and told to hide during the war. She said people in that town knew who she was. She didn't have kids, so she went on to Poland. The kid was very interested in religion. She sent him, against her will, sent him to religious academy. He became a priest, and today he teaches in a seminary for priests, and he's Jewish.
He knows it.
What?
He knows it.
Now he knows it.
But he's done nothing about it.
He's been to Israel. You know, look, you see, us Westerners, we like to brand people. Excuse me. You know, hey, you guys, you're Jewish, you know it now. Come on, start doing this stuff. People are people, and when people are indoctrinated and educated with something, imagine, the man's 45. Imagine I'm doing 45 years of education, upbringing, and a way of living your life, and saying, okay, now that. You know what I'm saying? It takes. It's a process. Let's put it that way.
What do you see happening? I mean, obviously it's going to be tied to economic development, I know that. But do you think that economic development could bring an improved, community of Jews? And then do you think within that your work would have, far greater effect? How do you see it? Obviously you wouldn't be here, I presume, if you didn't think it had a future.
Not necessarily. See, in Lubavitch we're educated to serve, not to look for careers or to look to build things. You know, I've always told people, and I mentioned it today, that if all the Jews live here, we'll shut the lights and we'll leave as well. But again, there are Jews here today. There are thousands of them. There are people who need the education and need to be reached out to and brought in to the fold. Okay, brought in and educated. Many of them, because of that, will make the choice and go on to Israel. Okay, we've had that experience already. Many of them will because of what we're doing, will move along. Others will set foot. I honestly don't know. To be very honest with you, I don't know. Okay? I think, again, this is my very biased opinion, that we have to invest in this community today. And we bought a school building where a kindergarten is. It's unfortunately closed tomorrow because it's a Lithuanian wonderful holiday. But I think we have to invest today because this is the reality on the ground today. Okay, 5-10 years down the line, it may change. I don't think you're going to have 20,000 Jews in Lithuania, barring the unexpected. I don't think this is going to become a haven for Jews, barring a Kosovo happening in Belarus or something. People streaming across the border. But I don't see the community growing. Stabilizing at what it is a possibility. But to be very honest with you, again, we're used to thinking in 5 and 10 year plans. I honestly don't think that way. 5 and 10 years, yes, what would I like to have done in this community as far as building the community, but not where the community is going to go. Because, and again, that if I see a young person who I think is better off in Israel, I'll make sure they go to Israel and I'll encourage them. Okay, certain families, I think they may be better off here at this point in time. Okay, so I'm not biased either way in that regard. It's just that I deal with the situation on the ground. I've said that to many people, they didn't really have what I was saying, but I hope I meant something.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian.
So I'm fine, and one more thing I wanted to tell, school is just great. And, we have Jewish classes, and we have regular classes as every other school has. And the thing is that our classes are on much higher level, because our classes like family meetings. we're sitting like a family, like in a little circle, and the teacher or the rabbi who teaches on the class is like I don't know, like a parent or somebody who takes care of his own children, you know, and that's what happens in school. Actually, not during the whole classes, because, you know, it's a school, you know, you can't love every teacher, you know, that's school. But anyways, we have a great time at school, and also during the summer, there's camp.